this is a couple of things we have to get to understand why the paperwork is a trap. This is one of the most important things for the people to get. Why, if the paperwork appears to be legitimate, why is it a trap? Right? It's the appearance of legitimacy that makes the trap spring. Okay? So I'm waiting on this sister to get in here. I don't see her. So I'm gonna go over this with y'all until she comes in. Right? Okay, so this is why the paperwork is a trap. You automatically presumed to be an imbecile in law based off papal bulls issued by the Pope in the 1300s. You are the subjects of explorers who got the discovery doctrine from the Pope. This discovery doctrine that the Pope wrote is referred to as the white man's burden. The white man looked like us, but he has a position of rank and royalty that gives him a legal designation as a free white person in law. So you need to go to the earliest Black's Law dictionary you can get up, and you look up free white persons in law. When the sister come in, she can ask me the questions so I can make it even clearer. Hey, how you doing? So, so I was explaining why the paperwork is a trap, right? So this is part of the clarification that you wanted.
Okay.
Okay, so now going back over, did you hear the part when I was talking about the unum sanctums of the Catholic Church, the papal bulls that declared us all imbeciles? And then the doctrine of discovery, that the papal bull that was also issued by a different pope that gave them what they called a right of conquest to institute something known as the white man's burden to spread Christianity around the world.
Right.
Okay. Now, from the position of being an imbecile in law, if you don't know this, you can't reverse it. Right?
Right.
So now, the first thing you have to understand is, where is the jurisdiction derived from? None of the jurisdiction is derived from the people of the land. That's the first problem. The second problem is the agreement that was made was between a merger company known as the Virginia Company, or the Virginia Trading Company, and the Northwest Trading Company. And both of them was trading in teas, tobaccos, and fur trade from colonial period. When the Boston Tea Party jumped off and George Washington established himself as the first president, it's because we in war. So now in war, the ones who is in the conqueror's position, the designation free white persons in law, these people install an interim government to rule over the people that's actually from the land with the birthright and the ties to the land. They have no jurisdiction, and they are aware of that, right? They're aware of it because they had to write a second constitution in the blood of Crispus Attucks, because the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled in vain. And this is where the George Washington challenge, feathers versus feathers, come in.
Right.
The invaders came in as Frenchmen, Dutchmen, Portuguese, and French, and in Spanish, conquistadors. They were all under exile out of Europe at this time.
Right.
The final exile was completed around 1611 to 1614. They finally exiled them. Now, from 1492, they trying to find a city called Cordoba. Mm-hmm. It's the city of gold. Now, they are searching in South America for the city of gold, Cordoba, under Cortez and the hordes of conquistadors. They look like us, like me. They had some that look like you, but the majority of them including Cortez was maybe a little lighter than me. Okay, now, when they established this interim government, they are establishing it against the will of the collective people of the land, what they call today the Native Americans that was already here.
Right.
Okay, now, the establishment of the fraud is the assumed jurisdiction of the United States corporation. This is where it gets critical. The assumed jurisdiction is not the truthful jurisdiction. It is a de facto corporation acting under the color of law. We have a superior claim in the court of righteousness. The superior claim is because we tied to the land. This is the close of the age. All contracts is expired or they are closed as of July the 6th, 2019 for non-performance. That means that they never honored any other treaties that they signed, and they all were signed under false pretenses to begin with, because the people they signed the treaty with, we call $5 Indians, was declared chiefs by the presidency in order to sign these treaties. We not party to those treaties. So the only thing we can do from the position of right is discover the fraud. If you're an imbecile in law, you're going to feed into the fraud. Mm-hmm. They know if you file paperwork of any kind with them, you acknowledge their position, meaning that you remain the imbecile.
Right.
Right. Now.
Because you're doing their bidding.
Right. You are following the instructions that the people that called you an idiot gave you to follow.
Telling you to do.
Right.
Right.
So if I followed that. If you use what they gave you to fight with, they only going to give you something to tie you deeper into the system. So in law, the doctrine of abandonment is applied on the discovery of the fraud. The abandonment doctrine means if you continue after the point of the discovery of the fraud, you become party to the fraud. You are equal and willing participant in the defrauding of the organic people of the land, because you filed this paperwork to try to get away from them. But all you did was prove their point that you are an imbecile.
Right.
Right. Now, once you prove their point, they go harder on your ass, because now you've proven you're an imbecile in law. You've given them jurisdiction because you traverse on the de facto corporation's jurisdiction when you put them on notice, when you acknowledge them in any written form.
Right.
Now, the only way out of any of that is to use the abandonment doctrine and abandon the contract. Put it on public notice for the people to know that you abandon the contract for non-performance in the discovery of the fraud.
And by putting it in public notice doesn't necessarily mean that you have to file paperwork their way. It's just public notice.
It's the tribal way that we done it before they came. We got to go back to our system to overthrow the de facto, the fraud. We have to use what's known as the de jure position. The de jure is going back to what we was doing before they came. That means we stand in our rightful positions as caretakers of the land, the air, and the water. Right now, all we need now is a jubilee year.
The what?
In which a jubilee year.
Okay.
Now, once we catch a jubilee year, any contracts that we unknowingly went in, the chief that discovers the fraud can void out every contract of every kind by putting it in the public domain and making it clear to the people that they've been victimized in this fraud, and that these are the fraudulent agents and actors. They came from France, they came from Denmark, they came from Portugal, they came from Spain and exile from Europe over here, and they wanted to colonize us, convince us that we the same people, and that we came from Africa. That automatically forfeits your right to the land.
I have a few questions.
Okay, let's go.
What is a jubilee year, first of all? Okay,
so the jubilee year is established as the year in which forgiveness of all contracts is executed. This is this year. This was declared a jubilee year already. I didn't do it.
Okay.
So once I discovered the jubilee year, now I'm telling everybody, these contracts are null and void now. Participating in any of their paperwork anything that falls under Uniform Commercial Code, anything that falls under Admiralty and Maritime Law. If you use any of these things to try to prove you're not an imbecile in law, you by default prove you're an imbecile in law because you are entertaining a fraudulent entity to assert your non-fraudulent position.
Right. So I follow all of that, and I feel like I follow all of that to the point on how this applies worldwide, not just over here, because technically that's happening to everyone.
Right. Right. So the tribal construct is the same all over Earth, wherever you go. When the order is given by the competent chief, he shows himself competent by exposing himself to the questions of the public. Right. And you expose yourself to the question of the public because you're telling the truth. And you're standing in a position of right, which gives you in law is called a de facto position. I mean, the de jure position. You're becoming the sui juris, the de jure person on the land, competent enough to override the papal bulls by telling you, no, this doesn't apply to us. And all of the things that this is the foundation of now no longer is in force because the fraud has been discovered.
So, like, the part where not even necessarily I'm having problems connecting the dots, because like I shared with you, I'm in the midst of a situation, but like I haven't heard back at all from anyone, and I haven't changed my status. I haven't filed anything at all. And somehow, some way, life has made it so that I'm in a place where I haven't really even been working a regular job for the majority of the year, because in 2021, I joined the entertainment union and I started working on sets, and just that was before even awakening or like really tapping into who we are and what we are, because I've just had like really weird life experiences my whole life. But once I got on a set, I was like, nothing is real. Everything is a lie. Like everything is thoroughly scripted. And before even seeing a live of yours, I could not stop seeing like the slave mentality that is very, very, very predominant on set. The last talented person on a set is the actor. Like we are honestly so talented at making fake things look real. And these people are literally giving away their life forces to make their dreams come true. Anyways, that's a whole other thing, right? So I'm in a position where I took a leap of faith and I was like, fuck it, I'm not going back to the industry. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna figure it out. I have some money saved. Things are gonna work out. Then I find you, or you find me, or however that happened, and you keep talking about how anybody that wants you to sign a contract is a slave catcher, and then thinking about going to work, I have that in the back of my head, and I'm like, well, that's weird. So I'm in a place and space where I see the power that I hold, but for the everyday person, for the person that's, you know, getting more in touch with their spiritual self and their powers, and even for myself, like I'm seeing some things and coincidences and manifestations coming to life, but it's still taking some time.
When you count your coincidences, when you get past 2, it's not a coincidence no more.
Right. And I'm seeing that, like I'm seeing all the synchronicities, and it all makes sense to me. But I know that if I'm driving on the street and my tags are not there, my driver's license not there, all of those things are not there, and a cop pulls me over, even now, knowing how to speak and how to say certain things, they still think they have a job to do and they have a responsibility to uphold. So regardless of what I say, before I prove my point, there's a very big chance that I can end up in jail and then in a bigger problem to begin with. So that's where the dots get confusing for me a little bit. Slash, personally, I was born in Venezuela. My whole family was born in Venezuela, but my dad's side is more Italian than my mom's side. They're from northern Italy, and my mom's side, her dad is from southern Italy. And in terms of remembering who we are, they drove us around to make us forget where we came from. I also have so many questions that are not really specifically formulated about all of that, because the question that I want to ask is, what does that mean? But yeah, like, what does that mean? Which land? All the lands?
And so everything that we're doing over here, closing out these fraudulent treaty contracts that they made, it has been going on all over the world. Matriarchal communities are rising now. Like, we still being shown movie sets, they telling us they tearing China up. But when you look at it, if you've ever seen a movie set, you see the extras standing around in what's supposed to be a turmoil situation, right? That's one of the dead giveaways that it's a filmed on a movie set. Because if everybody's running and screaming and throwing shit at each other, and then when the camera pans just a little too far to the right, you got spectators just standing. That's a fraud. That's a movie set. Those are extras. Nobody didn't tell them that it's their time to enter into the scene. They just got picked up by the camera haphazardly. But they did it on purpose because most people are not going to pay no attention no way. So these matriarchal governments, they rising in Africa, they rising in Asia, they rising in South America, North America, Australia, and New Zealand. The women are reclaiming the earth back because it's their birthright. Everybody in the Americas, all of the masters is here because all of the organics of the earth sent their masters here to fight this conjure war so that they can assist. So when you read the story of Lord Krishna in the old Vedic materials, he here. When you read the story of the rebels from the Haitian Revolution that overthrew the French, they're all here to close their conjures. And the ones who, like Haile Selassie, came back to offer his power as a monarch and a high priest magician to the people of this land to overthrow the same people that invaded Africa under the Berlin Conference. So all of the masters are here. Somebody just has to identify them. So that's what I've been doing. You know, Chief Sitting Bull was Notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace. Chief Crazy Horse was the one that we called the old dirty bastard. Big Baby Jesus Osiris, right? Tupac Amaru was Tupac Shakur, right? So when we get done going through all of the lists, I done named multiple people. That's their designation, that this is who they are. Haile Selassie came back as Ermias Ashkadam, aka Nipsey Hussle. He's in Eritrea right now because there was a confirmed murder order on his head. So the Nation of Islam extracted him, and everybody think Big U had him set up because that's the OG that the FOI had to get permission to perform a military action on their territory by removing one of the chiefs, right? They had to know, and then his mother was there. She was overseeing it to make sure that our baby didn't get hurt for real. People don't pay those little subtleties attention, right? But his mama said she was there, right? And what made her go, she said she seen Nipsey all lit up. Well, I already posted it on Facebook. He's standing with the nigga that put the hit on him, right? So when I get done telling everybody Toussaint, that's divine insight. The Bookman in Florida, right? The priestesses, they here, right? John Dessalines, that's barbecue calling for Toussaint to return back home so they can close the conjure. But he had to go through this prison system because you got to get out of this shit the same way you came in it. It's going to look the same. When you go back and study the Haitian Revolution, you find that the French took Toussaint captive not once, but twice. The first time they took him captive was before they set the revolution off. And when he escaped and he got out there to tell them what was going on, right, then they formulated a plan to call the ancestors forth to aid and assist in overthrowing the French on the land, which they end up successful. But we were still in the Gullah Wars in Florida. So when they finished the Haitian Revolution, the available soldiers in Haiti went to Florida to fight in the Gullah Wars. Jamaica sent soldiers to fight in Florida in the Gullah Wars. The Cayman Islands, the Dominica, which was actually Hispaniola with Haiti, they all came to fight in the Gullah Wars. When those other wars were fought to whatever conclusion they came to, all of the soldiers that were still fighting came to fight in Florida in the Gullah Wars. That's why they call it Seminole. Seminole comes from the root word semi, which means half. It was mixed tribes. So the Spanish called us Seminole. They all mixed up. Why are they all mixed up? Because we left every part of the land to go fight in Florida. They said that the Industrial Revolution caused the Great Migration to Detroit, New York, Chicago, right? And then Los Angeles. No, that wasn't what caused that. Because of the Conjure War, the George Washington Challenge, all of the soldiers that was fighting in the Gullah Wars who wasn't from Florida went back home. They declared the land abandoned under the Lewis and Clark expedition, in which they was doing a land survey to determine the royal hierarchy on the land, and they discovered that all of the castles was empty because none of the chiefs sent their soldiers to war without going with them. So we cleared out all of the castles. They turned them into prisons and state buildings and asylums and told us crazy people and convicts supposed to go there. Them was the people from the land they was holding hostage. The Trail of Tears is when they took the name off Big Mama House and called it the Big House, and they labeled her farm the plantation, right? But that was a POW camp. It wasn't a slave camp. And we get that part of history confused in order to push the narrative that we from Africa, not from here. As soon as we get past that narrative, the only way to get past that narrative is good Pan-African studies. And the Africans will tell you when you talk to the scholars, y'all ain't come from over here, bruh. That's some bullshit they made up so they could steal y'all shit.
I was in Seattle. This was when I first moved to Atlanta, so closer to 2013, 14 maybe. And I went to go visit a really close friend in Seattle, and I was talking to one of his co-workers who was from Ghana, somewhere in Africa. And we're talking, and I don't remember what I must have said, but I must have said something about me being white. And he looked at me and he said, "You're not white." And I looked at him, and there was like this understanding, because personally, like I said, because I was born in Venezuela, grew up in Italy, like, especially since I've come over here, whenever I'm filling out forms and it says white, Hispanic, I'm like, these options are incorrect for me personally. So I kind of understood what he said, but it didn't really click into, obviously, recently, the true meaning of what he said. But as far as back to the paperwork, like, how does someone who doesn't have saving, who is living day to day, how do they tap into their trust? Like, how?
Okay, now, ain't nobody getting in their trust until we overthrow the dead system. We know when the dead system is overthrown because they're going to put it in the public domain. The transitional government is currently underway in Raven Rock, Colorado, right? When you go back and you listen to the lady that put the Pope on notice, she said that the mothers of the land has already picked the chiefs. They
Okay.
know who we are and they know what we doing.
Okay.
Right? But the people that's not from the land, that don't speak what we speak, they can't understand what we doing until it get to a certain point where they remember enough of their ancestral memories to put the same pieces together. Following,
Right.
clarifying the stories of, are we Moors or were we already here? Right? Clarifying the story, Moor is a catch term. It was created specifically for an agenda. The same as Cherokee. When you do the etymology of Cherokee, it's not even the same. It ain't even a similar spelling, right? So when you start figuring all of this out, it wakes you up to the awareness that if these people are frauds, the only way to get rid of them is to accept your own and be yourself. Stop trying to be them. Because as long as you're trying to be them, they 100% right. You are an imbecile in a legal jurisdiction. And you keep traversing on their jurisdiction because you don't know no better. As soon as you learn better, you separate. Ain't nobody getting to their trust until we get done with this shit. And then you ain't gonna have to look for what's yours because the order has already been given. Give everybody what they rightfully earned, what they rightfully deserve by the law of right, which is the law of righteousness. Right? So if you took their family shit, this the Jubilee year for you to give it back. We gotta have enough memory of the culture because all of the parts of the story is in our culture, told in song and dance and art, where a picture worth 1,000 words, where we reading pictures, right? Because we didn't just read the written word. All of our written documents was kept at Big Mama house. So if you go back and you find out that a lot of our elders' birth records got burned up in the town square, in the city hall building, and they all burned them down to get rid of the records. But the records that predate 1492 is kept in caves and national parks so that we can't stumble across them. And then they flood us with misinformation to deliberately mislead the people. And anybody that try to tell us what's going on become marked for death. That's a Steven Seagal Italian knock for you. Marked for death.
Um, in my head, not even in my head, like in my body, in my spirit, whenever, like, all I feel like and all I can sense, the best reference I have is I grew up watching Sailor Moon in Italy, and I've recently had it on in the background just playing, and I'm just blown away by all the symbolism in there to begin with. And all I truly feel and see is like Crystal City. That's where I feel like I'm going next.
Right. The Crystal City is going to land in Colorado on Emerald Lake. It's a jumper ship. That's the Cordoba, the city of gold they couldn't find. Because when the Anunnaki Wars took place, when Enlil launched his power attack on Earth, that's the ship that Enki's son Marduk took to Nibiru. And when Enlil's son Marduk took over Earth, Enki's son Marduk took over Nibiru so that the Enlil won't shoot for his father's seat of power, which would have really been fucked. So when the ship come back, that's where it's going to land. In that county that Emerald Lake is in, it's called, I think it's called Bow County.
Mm-hmm.
And that county is shaped like the Liberty Bell.
So now that I'm talking to you, I actually, when I was a child, like elementary school child, I read a book that talked about this like crater hitting somewhere, creating a lake, and then like these vampires or like other beings came out. And I keep thinking about that book a lot.
What's the name of it?
I don't remember at all because it was an Italian book too, because I was in Italy at the time. But then
Because
years
you know they
later,
got books over in Europe that we don't get. We don't have over here. And the information that they put out in the public domain over there is no ways the same as the information we get. When we get Oxford University's History of the World and Georgetown University History of the World, Georgetown is over here, Oxford is over there. But when you look at the history of the world, they tell it two entirely different stories.
that like I follow that because I'm assuming it's because, you know, the experience, the life experience that I've had, where I've lived in 3 different continents, and I did go through the Italian educational system. And I say it often, but I haven't really learned anything since I've been in the States. I've learned how to play the system because the universities have always tried to like tell me one thing over the other, as far as like what my progress was. But then I moved to Atlanta. A few years later, I went to visit NOLA for the first time with a girlfriend. We walked into a voodoo shop, and we ended up speaking to a woman who was doing readings, and we ended up speaking to her for hours. And she was reading my friend and like giving her messages and all sorts of things. And then she looks at me, and at that time, plenty of quote unquote weird things had happened in my life, but I never really truly embraced it because my grandma was schizophrenic and my mom has a ton of trauma from it. So it's never really spoken about until I started asking questions recently. But that woman, when she came to me, she just looked at me for a few minutes and she was like, I can't read you. Like, all I'm getting is deep waters. And
That's your motherline's protection, a veil that they put up for the oracles. They should have told her a couple of things. That one, that you come from an earth tribe, because everybody, but your earth tribe is waterbenders. When your birthday?
January 28th. So I'm in Aquarius.
Yeah. So you write on the energy signature for that. That's why she couldn't see nothing but the waters.
And I love the water. I love.
So when you go back and you study the customs of old Italy, they had the same Big Mama. You know what I'm talking about? The old lady that make, come here, son, sit down and eat. You're not leaving my house without a plate. That lady, right? That's an Earth trait. That's not Anunnaki. We do that on Earth. It's a mother thing to do. And on the feminine planet, you can tell those native, because these women have to feed you before you leave, because if something happened to you, she could have gave you your last meal and received the blessing for feeding you before you went out.
So if she wasn't able to read me, but I also wasn't trying to make it easy for her to read me. I was
I know,
hesitant.
because you wired that way from your life experiences and your genetic memory.
So what about when I do go get readings and they're very on point? Is it because I'm
You
more open?
participate. You participate.
Okay.
Right? Because
That
you
makes sense.
have to trust the person doing the reading enough to participate, and then they can pick it all up.
Right. And speaking of, you know, Italian ways, a few years ago, I was listening to Imani heavily, and she was talking about she was just not gonna interact with us anymore and stop going live because she was catching a lot of backlash for it. And I remember feeling
Who
also
is she?
the hood healer.
Okay, all right, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, because that's how I found you, through her.
Mm.
But this was
She
before
asks
even
good
the
questions too.
What's up?
She asks really good questions.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I saw that live and I was just shook. I was so confused, and not confused at all. Like, it was the weirdest feeling. And luckily I had one person that I could share the video with, and they confirmed a lot of things that I had been feeling, going through my whole life. I'm gonna stop going on live. I'm gonna stop doing the readings. And I freaked out a little bit because she was just like so on point, and like I was receiving her messages and whatever she was saying. But anyways, I go to an artist market, and there's a book there that's called Italian Witchcraft. And I just pick it up, and the girls are like, that's so funny. My partner didn't want me to bring this book. It's a rare book, but I just brought it. And then when I was reading it, I was like, I feel like I know all this stuff, but I don't know how I know the stuff, because
It's genetic memory. When you pick up a book and you like, it's Italian, real true Italian magic is based around food.
I believe that.
Spirit cooking. Like a lot of what Abramovich was doing with spirit cooking, she used the blood rights of the Babylonian blood magic and instituted them into the Italian cooking. And she's from Russia. He was a agent that came over here in a witness protection program from Russia through the CIA. That's why Abramovich was even here.
Mm.
But she was protected by the old man George. But Bush brought the individual over here. Right? I ran across a lot of people telling me to abandon the people that sent me on the mission because they didn't like the way they looked. But they sent me to go extract their ass from some dumb shit. That make this shit make sense. You a soldier, I'm a soldier. The general sent me to come get you, and you want me to abandon the general in order to run off with you. Make it make sense. It don't work like that.
So, like, is it possible that Grandpa knew more things that he ever shared with anyone?
Yeah, a lot of what was going on in World War II was kept secret because they didn't want their children privy to that type of traumatic information.
But at the same time, he's the one that was married to my grandma, the schizophrenic, and
that just means she was an untrained oracle.
I'm aware, but nobody in the family saw it like that.
Yeah,
especially now.
You're the only one supposed to figure it out.
Okay.
That's your job. You're the family redeemer.
The family is all spread out. I don't talk to anybody from.
You still the family redeemer. You still the family redeemer. No, that don't matter. Your birth position in your family tree classified you as the family redeemer. That's why you're born under Aquarius. We're going into the Aquarian age. The water signs rule with the wisdom of the ages.
So, like, regardless of the fact that nobody in my family
hears
what I'm talking about,
look, they don't have to hear you. When the shit get done clearing up, they gonna look for you because they're not gonna be able to get to their family bank without you.
And whatever information I feel like I'm still missing, that's just gonna.
It'll come
in.
Yeah, because if you get everything at one time, you won't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Knowledge comes in degrees and by level. The level of understanding increases the level of information. If you're not mentally prepared to process it, digest it, and apply it, it has to wait until you develop to the point you are. And that's why it takes some of us 50 years to be an elder, but others are elders at 33 or 42 or 44.
Okay.
Because it takes us different levels. The older souls take the longest to wake up because they do everything slow.
It's just, I'm so grateful for you because, like I said, I've had so many questions, especially like things just started happening when I got to Atlanta. Like my diet started changing, just like weird things. And that's really when I started becoming aware of like these questions that I've had. And then this like anger towards men, although like personally in my life, I've had shitty boyfriends, but I've had great men around me. And I never quite understood where that.
So let me explain it to you so you can understand. The reason why a lot of women are put off with men is because there's been an ongoing rape campaign, desecration of holy places, which mean the mutilation of women, both vaginally and both the mammary glands, desecration of the holy places. the women who are in sync with Mother Earth know that she's going through the same thing, right? They cut down the tree of life in South Africa because that's where we used to store our memory. So when we reconnect back to the tree of eternity, the tree of life, but we put our hands on it and it grounds, and our consciousness will feed through our body, and our DNA will begin unlocking in levels. And we used to do these rituals. The major one, the mother tree was in South Africa at the Yoni of Earth's Yoni. But you had these trees all over the world where tribes would go to upload and download information. The trees are record keepers of the earth as well as the stones, right? So we go and we put our hands on the tree and our bare feet to the earth, and whatever signature our family over the years is left in the tree uploads into our system through a cycle of information exchange between you and the tree. That's why they is so gung-ho on chopping these trees down. They got a whole campaign been running in South America for the last 200 years, and they can't get the Amazon rainforest chopped down fast enough. But now it's too late because all these tribes waking up.
Okay, so South America cutting down trees. Then why is South America in the state that it's in? And I'm particularly thinking about Venezuela. Like, my mom went maybe 5-6 years ago and had a mental breakdown when she was there because of like how scarce the resources are.
They still have war energy hovering over them. The whole South America, Central America, North America has been in a warlock for the last 200 years. So when we go back to Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, and these different countries down there, in certain areas where you go, where the warriors fought the hardest, where the energy is the strongest, and you get caught up in that war energy. And if you're not strong enough to absorb and transmute it so you can use it, it'll break your ass down like a midget breaking down a giant. You won't ever understand what's going on because you're not reading the lay of the land and the energy of what's been going on. We've been in a long 500-year war, right? And they've used every artifice of deception to keep us from ever figuring out what the fuck they was doing.
So back to the paperwork, and I apologize if I'm being dense.
You got to keep coming back because it's a question that needs to be clarified, not just for you.
Exactly. So like, what is the strategy for someone that doesn't have the material or financial means at the moment to hold them over?
That ain't nothing they can do. They just got to do the best they can until they're in a different position.
Okay.
But everybody finna feel the pinch.
Okay.
When we get to the flip point, everybody gonna feel the pinch. Ain't no escaping somebody. You can try to avoid the suffering, but it's coming. Okay. And it's not doomsday prophecy. It's transition from old to new. It's labor pains, birthing pains. A woman understands that better than anybody else. You ain't gonna escape the pinch. You're gonna feel it.
The other thing that I kind of keep thinking about in terms of like paperwork and your words about like people are just going to start dropping around us, repeat in my head all the time. And I mean, I feel like I've been talking to robots for a long time.
A lot of these motherfuckers is.
So the other thought that I had recently is like, are they actually gonna start like dropping around us? Or
they already started. They got a whole movie out called I forgot the name of it. It's like Sudden Death or something.
Right.
Everybody blaming it on, but this shit was gonna happen whether they do it or not. because everybody not synced to the mitochondria of the earth, and that's how earth get rid of the parasites.
Okay, so that's what you mean. Like, when, because I was like, the other thing that it's making sense to me or coming to me, it's the fact that like consciousness and awareness. So like, obviously the more you tap into yourself, what you're seeing with your eyes of this reality, it's going to be entirely different than everyone else around you.
Well, I'm gonna give you a prime example. If you went to Chicago in '92, all of the suburb cities had big strip malls. That was the thing to invest in. If you go there now, all of those strip malls is empty. Where in the fuck is all these people at? Like, nobody's noticing that there's millions and millions of people literally not here no more. Some of them, right? We went to bed one night, woke up, and they don't exist. Right? But we still in the same holographic construct. So the layout looks the same, but some of the what they call non-actionable players in the game just not in the game no more. We passed that level now.
Okay. I have tons of questions. So you let me know when it's time for somebody else, because I have tons of questions. But in terms
the name of that movie was Die Suddenly.
Die Suddenly?
Yeah.
I mean, I rewatched Avatar before 2020 hit, and granted, I was stoned, but when the movie was over, I was so shook because I was like,
because it's the story of the Anunnaki's arrival on Earth.
Yeah, I was like,
all you got to do is remember this: when we was breathing the double oxygen molecule, we were governed by what's called the platinum group metals. They came platinum group metals, and our skins were pinks and greens of different olive hues. When you look at the olive, it's not just green olives. You got black olives, red olives. You from Italy, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. But these different shades of the olive, it was used to represent the different daughters of Isis, which was the 12 daughters of Isis and the sun. The last two daughters, Scotta and Scotia, was the founders of Scotland and Ireland. These was the ones they ran out when St. Patrick talked about he was hunting the snakes. So we say olive complexion because it's a series of colors.
And my mom is olive tone, and if she spends 2 minutes under the sun, she just entirely dark. But in terms of universal law, right? If energy is neither created nor destroyed, and if everything you put out must come back to you, then what did women do that we've been oppressed for so long?
The women didn't do anything. That's what made it so evil. The women are being oppressed for being good, for being inherently righteous at the root, and being the heirs to earth. This is what their punishment was for. It's a war, but it comes across as punishment because you can only see the side that of the war that we own, the victim side, the defender side, the black side of the chessboard. They coming in from the attacker side, the white side of the chessboard. And that's why they use these color designations to divide us, so we can't never figure out the game they playing.
So it's not because we got to, like, it's not because we misused our own power once we created man?
No, that was done by permission of Prime Creator. It was a joint venture between Mother Earth, the Queen of Heaven and Earth, and Prime Creator to create men for companionship and protection, because they knew that the motherfuckers was coming. And the women back then had instant manifestation abilities that was usurped using conjuring science. That's why they put the moon there, to handicap the women. That's what the story of Eve is all about. If people pay attention to the story, the first rat on record is motherfucking Adam, bitch ass, because he didn't protect his woman, And then he told on her and gave her up to the enemy who was masquerading as their God. Where she was standing firm, he threw her to the wolves. Now that's a bitch ass, coward ass motherfucker if I ever seen one.
There was a time that you were talking about, I believe it was you, about braiding hair and how that's protecting your crown chakra or whatnot. And when it was time for my confirmation in Italy, I'm unsure of what ended up happening, but I ended up doing all my girlfriends' hairs and braiding all their hair, which I think about often nowadays.
Hairdressers was a position of rank in our organic communities.
A position
Also,
of rank, you said?
yeah. When you go so now we go to beauticians, but the beauticians was trained out of the royal families. They the ones came up with the wigs thousands of years ago. Like you had the guys now who call themselves woke that talk about the sisters that wear the weaves. We invented that shit before racism existed. Racism didn't exist when we invented weaves. Racism wasn't here when we invented wigs. The first wigs shit looked like lamb's wool because they was made out of lambskin fur. But we don't want to acknowledge that, and we want to say because she got extensions in her hair, she's trying to be other than what she is. Some of these sisters got straight hair too. Black as you can get them. Look like a Hershey bar skin complexion with straight hair, her natural hair. But we don't know the history of ourselves enough to know that the one who does the hair, that's a position of rank. Everybody not allowed to touch our hair. That's why barbers and beauticians have a special place in what we call the organic communities. And that's why people from all over the world cater to our fetish for doing our hair. Our women love to do their hair in different styles. She can wear an afro today and she can wear that motherfucker's pressed out tomorrow, depending on how she want to change her look. That was part of what's called the beauty